on today. This was a pretty powerful quote. While you can buy your way to growth, you absolutely cannot buy your way to greatness. And our schools at Rivercrest and at Quitman have experienced greatness recently over the last couple of years, and we attribute that to professional learning communities. And so we just want to share our stories with you, share our practices with you, in hopes that you can have those same experiences at your school. So we wanted to start with the why. We felt like anytime you begin a new journey in anything that you do, you should start with the why. That should be your driving force behind your decision making, behind your daily practices, and in everything that you do. And so why should you begin professional learning communities in your school? The number one reason that we feel it is important is because it's research based and it's research proven to work. Collected teacher efficacy is part of John Hattie's work, and he has over 40 years of research in education. And this collected teacher efficacy keeps coming up as one of the top indicators of for student growth. And so, you know, when you have those teachers and they're all making decisions and they're all doing the work together as far as they know what they want students to learn, they know how they're going to measure students' growth, and they know how they're going to respond when students don't learn or already know it. That's very powerful. And we have experienced that in our schools, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later in this presentation. The second one is because it is a true culture shift. We've experienced that at our schools, and we know that, you know, culture is key to any type of success in your school. And if you don't have the culture in place and you don't have it established, then it's going to be hard to get any work done, and most especially productive work. And you know, with the recent challenges in education, as far as, you know, when we return to school and our reentry plan, and what is that going to look like, and what is blended learning going to look like, what's our virtual options going to look like, you know, the culture is going to be key, and we're going to have to probably do things differently than what we've ever done before. And so having that strong foundation of a culture is going to be very important as we begin the school year. Then, you know, once you have this established and once you're using those research-based practices, true transformation is going to happen. And that's what we all want in our school. And I think that all of us want, you know, for our students in our schools to be successful. And so how do we get there, and what do we do? I'm going to turn it over to Sally. Let her speak a little bit about this.
Yeah, you know, thinking about the why, that's a little bitty word, but it is so impactful on our practice when we really stop to think about the why. Why do we do the things that we do? Why do we make the choices that we make? Why do we choose to work together in particular ways? And why are we having the impact that we are, or maybe even are not having, on student achievement? And that's really what we're wanting to keep our focus on, are our students and their learning. As a district administrator, I think it's important to set that tone that we're here for students. And this is a way for us to really come together and collaborate in different ways than we ever have before. You know, years ago, we tried to work on collaboration in a district that I had worked in, and kind of did this whole forth and collaborate. But with this, we have so much more clarity about how we can work together to impact change. And that culture shift is really very important. I'm reminded of the work of Thomas Guskey, and asked at a meeting that I went to many years ago, I've been at this a long time, to order, how would you put in these three items into practice? Would you say, what changes first, teacher beliefs, student success, or teacher practice? And I pondered that for a little bit, and was really a little bit surprised when he shared the research behind that and stated that teacher practice has to change first. And when that practice changes, we see the results in student success. And then as students continue to succeed, then teachers' beliefs begin to change as well. And I've seen that time and time again, through my career. And I think it's never been more so than through the work that I've been involved with professional learning communities. It really does bring about that transformation, and we can begin to see how students begin to own their learning, that they're celebrated, that they realize that they can be successful, and that's what it's all about. So this is probably the one thing in my 40 plus years of education that I think is the most important component that we can bring to public education.
So we just want to reiterate this point again, that the most important investment a school can make is not in an initiative, it's not in a program, but it's in the people, and it's in our colleagues. And it's when we invest in our people that we start seeing the results that we want. And so that's what professional learning communities do, is they invest in the people of your school. So what does it look like? We just wanted to share our stories and our journey of what this looks like in our school, and in hopes that you can take some of our practices and some of our decisions that we've made and start implementing those in your school. So Sally, if you want to go ahead and share Rivercrest's journey, that would be great.
Sure. In the Rivercrest School District, we were fortunate enough to be accepted into the cohort 2 at our elementary school level. And it is a commitment that, my goodness, what a great decision that has been for our staff, but more importantly for our students. As a superintendent, I see it as my supporting role to establish the guidance, to set a direction, but then to equip people with the skills and the supports they need to kind of take that and run with it, to cheerlead and to build that whole systemic approach for implementation. So in the elementary school, as part of cohort 2, the work began with working on the vision, the mission, collective commitments, and those are things that we can all say, oh, we've done that. But with this guided support of the solution tree consultants, it takes on a whole different tone, whole different meaning. And as we go into year 3, I have seen so much growth. Last year was a focus on working through interventions. This coming year is a focus is on assessment. So it's a layered approach. It's doable. It's making a difference for our students. And in the high school, we're co-located with the elementary campus. I had teachers that would go over to some of those meetings, and I tried to make every meeting that I could because I wanted to have a deep understanding. I thought it was really important as the district leader to be informed, to be knowledgeable, and golly, I'm a learner too. And I think that that's really important. And so those high school teachers, some of them began to go over, our instructional facilitators, and we got a little taste of what that is. And we saw the impact that it was having in our elementary school. The teachers were working together, and usually elementary teachers are a little more likely to embrace changes and do things. And we still had pockets where people were working in isolation and not doing that. But as a result of our work with our consultants through Solution Tree, what a difference. I mean, what a mindset change. And so we began to see increases in student achievement that some people thought, wow. We began to see that student success. And teachers realized, what a difference that they were making. That's what they signed up for when they became a teacher. And so it really is rewarding. And so we looked at it at the high school level, and we applied as part of cohort 3 and didn't get it for our secondary level. But we had some ESSA money, and we used that to contract with Solution Tree. We had a PLC coach, we had a math consultant, and we had a literacy consultant. That was what I had enough money to allocate. And I am so grateful that we did that, particularly given the circumstances of this past year. When we had to go home in March, because of the things that we had done throughout the year, the focus, the way teachers had worked with one another, the relationships they had built, not only among themselves, but also with students, it helped us to maintain that contact, to provide that student support. And though it wasn't perfect, and we still have lots to learn and much to grow, it made a difference. In our high school level, we looked at the things that had put us in level 3 for reading. We had scored slightly above that 40% cutoff, so we were at level 3. So we identified 3 overarching standards: citing textual evidence, looking for main ideas, and vocabulary based on our ACT Aspire scores. And that served as the basis for the work that we did in our collaborative teams. PE teachers, once a week, they were giving students an article, short article to read, and asking them to do one of those things. We focused each 9 weeks on one of those components, and we began to see students really growing, really blossoming. We could judge that based on our NWEA results, and we could see the growth that they were making. And I'm telling you, our high school teachers were disappointed, really disappointed, that we couldn't take the ACT Aspire, because we thought we were making the significant moves that were going to result in high levels of student achievement, get us off that level 3 list, and be where we needed to be. And I'm confident that that would have been the case. So other kind of side benefits of this as well, we had a few first-year teachers, and they were so appreciative of the level of support that those collaborative meetings afforded them. They realized how valuable that was. I also had a number of teachers who I had anticipated that were actually going to retire this year, but they kind of came to like working with one another, and they didn't. So my teacher turnover rate is really much lower than it has been. And sometimes I know it can go the other way, but it's all about those relationships, that culture, seeing the value in working together. So our story, pretty happy. Our high school applied. We are part of cohort 4 this coming school year. So we're excited to see that increased level of support that we're going to have to be able to provide for our students. And I know that our journey is just beginning. I know how challenging it is, but I can't think of anything that is going to be more valuable, particularly during this particular time when who knows what's going to happen in our educational environment, that we're not going to benefit from the support, and our students aren't going to realize. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to have that support that they need to be successful, no matter what our environment is.
Mr. Sack?
Let me make sure he's got the ability to mute Missy.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm Michael Stacks, Assistant Superintendent and K-12 Co-Principal at the Quitman School District. We are part of Cohort 2, the PLC pilot project. To speak a little bit about our journey and our story here at Quitman, one of the reasons that we believe we have been successful here in our district with this professional learning community initiative has been because of the culture and the work around culture that we were able to do prior to receiving the pilot opportunity. So coming on as an administrator in the Quitman District 5 years ago, it was very obvious early on that our teachers were working really hard, but they weren't working on the right work. They were working independently, many especially in the high school behind their own closed doors. Not working with one another, and when they did work together, it was around meeting housekeeping type items, never around true student learning. We had work to develop a mission with sets of belief statements that involved our stakeholders, but it was really nothing more than just words on a wall. It wasn't a true living, breathing mission statement that guided the work that we did. Not all of our staff believed that students could work at high levels. They didn't believe that, or many did not believe that they were all our kids. Those are football boys, they belong to the football boys. Those are band kids, they belong to the band teacher. Those are special needs students, they belong to the special education teachers. And many had been teaching the way that they had been taught. And so we worked the first couple of years, as my experience as an administrator here, to change that culture and that mindset. And we started by focusing on a shift with high expectations for everyone in everything. And that oftentimes when you try to change a culture, something that is so ingrained in mindsets that are so ingrained, there are going to be staff who don't get on board with that. And so what we found that was those staff who don't get on board, they leave. And so we experienced, or retire, we experienced a turnover those first couple of years, and as in my position here, of almost half. And so we worked then to be able to identify those leaders within our staff who were still here, who later became members of our guiding coalition, to identify those folks and bring them on board as leaders in our district and help us hire well. And that's a very big, important piece of this work and professional learning communities, is hiring well. And so we worked to identify potential candidates who shared the same beliefs that we had, whose belief in high levels of learning for all kids was that we shared. And so those leaders that we identified after we were able to become a Solution Tree school later joined our guiding coalition. And so we've been able to expand on their work and bring others on board as members of our guiding coalition. One thing that we found in relation to hiring, while I'm on that subject, as we started this work and became a professional learning community in our district, we're a small district, 750 students, K-12, is that we went from having 5, maybe 10 applicants when we would open up an elementary position to this most recent year of having over 50 applicants for one position. And I mentioned earlier the amount of turnover that we had experienced those prior 2 years. Now, 3 years into this work, we had an opening, and we only had two elementary openings this school year, and one of those was related to it. So we're very happy that we have certified teachers now wanting to come to Quitman, and it's also impacting our classified staff. We had classified positions open up this year, and we actually were able to hire classified with certified applicants. So we had certified teachers who weren't able to be hired in a certified position, but wanted to be part of the professional learning community and the work that we have going on here, that they applied for certified positions. So those pool of applicants have definitely improved. I want to speak just a bit. We'll talk more about our guiding coalition in just a moment when we get to the how. But before we leave the how, while we're still talking about the what, I want to talk a little bit about my experience as an administrator. So this is my 17th year in education. The work that we've done with Solution Tree and establishing professional learning communities within our district has by far been the most life-changing work that I've ever been a part of. It has changed my practice as an administrator more than anything that I can point to in my 17 years. As an administrator, when you get involved in this work, and I don't know if those of you online, many of you are like I was, and as an administrator like I was very much still am very much type A, but was very controlling. And so my leadership was one of, I'm going to model it for you. Here's what I expect from you, but I'm going to pretty much micromanage and control you along the way. If you become a professional learning community and you're an administrator in that environment, you've got to get rid of that ego, and you got to get out of the way. Administrators definitely set the tone for this work. I had to get over myself and step back and let those leaders that we had identified within our school for our guiding coalition, I had to let them step out and start doing the work and start leading. I still trust, but I verify. And so, I'm by no means telling you that I've given up all of that control that I like to have, but yet I have allowed staff members, and we have worked to allow staff members to have those leadership roles and help guide and have input while still verifying, that we are still setting high expectations for our students and staff and all that we do. We're ensuring high levels of learning for all our kids, and that all the work that our staff and our school are doing is around those 4 big questions. It's important that we often take the pulse of our staff, and Ms. Wallace is very good at that, and she and I work as co-principals, and this work has taught us how to do that, how to play on our strengths. She's very much a strong curriculum and professional development leader, while I'm a stronger in the systems area, so we work well together. But we often take the pulse of our staff to see where they are in this process, because it is hard work, and so you don't want them to become overwhelmed. I think that's all I have for now, Ms. Wallace. Do you have anything else?
Yes. So a little bit of my backstory. This is my 15th year in education, and I had done this work as a part of cohort 1 in the Greenbrier School District with my friend Mandy Dunlap at Eastside Elementary. And so whenever the opportunity came up at Quitman, and I said, I will not come there unless we apply for this grant, because I knew how powerful it was, and I knew how life-changing it was, and I knew that it was the right work for kids. And so that was kind of we have to apply if I'm going to come there. And so that happened, and long story short, here we are in year 3 of cohort 2. And so but this work has taught me a lot as a leader. It's taught me a lot as a practitioner, as an educator, and really knowing how to develop your people, and knowing how to trust your people, and that you're only as good as the people around you. And so we are constantly looking for, how do we develop leaders? How do we develop people to have the same beliefs that we do? And so we're going to go through that process with you next. So we're going to look at the how. There are 4 pillars of a professional learning community, and Sally, Michael, and we have experienced all 4 of these. And so that mission statement of why do you exist, that's a very powerful question. And so every school district across our state will start the beginning of the year PD with your mission statement. But you can't start the year with your mission statement and then stop there. It has to be, you have to constantly review that throughout the school year, because it is the foundation of why we exist, and it's the foundation of our work. And so when we developed, whenever I came on board at Quitman, they had already worked to develop a mission statement. And a lot of times as administrators, we get really stuck in the wording of our mission statement, when we want to make sure that we've articulated it well, and then it will look pretty on a wall or on the background of a social media post. But it's more important about how are you living that mission statement out. And so we developed our collective commitments around our mission statement, and we identified and defined the actions that we're going to, that show examples of our mission statement. And so our collective commitments have been the basis of everything that we do. They're the basis of our celebrations. They begin our professional development in our meetings. We start with that every time. And so we felt like that's very, very important. And then the next, what do we hope to become? As a leader, you have to be one step ahead of your staff. And so you have to understand the process well enough to know where are we going. And so you're always one step ahead of everybody. And then those commitments turn into values. And so when everybody's rowing in the same direction, and we're all going in the same way, we know that we are getting to our purpose, and we've developed those goals, and we're looking at how do we progress through that. We have a great video here from Julie Schmidt that just she says this better than I do.
So at the beginning, I said all of you are leaders, no matter what your role is. So leadership provides the necessary framework and the foundation to do all of this hard work. And this hard work and the deep embedding of a change of those behaviors that lie under the waterline only happens if all of you as leaders are committed to the foundational principles, the mission, the vision, the values, and goals of your organization. If you're not committed to those, or those are things that are kind of put on a shelf after you initially talk about them, you start to see cracks in your foundation, and they begin to act as elephants in the room. So the first one is mission. This is the reason we exist. And this is why schools' mission statements across the country all sound alike, because schools exist for similar purposes, right? We exist to ensure that every student reaches their maximum potential. That's ours. Over the years, I've developed a caveat with that. And many mission statements say, our mission is for every student to reach their maximum potential. What do you think I'm going to say my caveat is? Not a single person in your system gets to predetermine what a kid's potential is. We don't get to predefine it. That's the danger in talking about maximum potential. We don't get to predefine what that is, all right? So it clarifies our purpose. Mission statements can become statements that we set on a shelf, but they really do and really should drive why it is that we exist. But then we have to think about what are the things below the waterline that actually happen. So does this match your mission statement? It's our mission to help students learn if they're conscientious, responsible, attentive, developmentally ready, fluent in English, and come from homes with concerned parents who take an interest in their education. Or how about this one? Does it match? Our mission is to create a school with an unrelentless focus on learning. Failure is not an option, but ultimately, it will be the responsibility of the student and his or her parents to take advantage of the opportunities to learn. I taught it, they just chose not to learn it, right? Or how about this one? Our mission is ensure success for all our students. We will do whatever it takes to ensure their success, provided we don't have to change the schedule, modify any of our existing practices, or adopt any new practices. Change is not an option, right? So do the things you espouse to believe in actually match your behaviors? Can you even recite your mission statement?
So I think she said that well. And as I know, as administrators with Michael and I, you know, when she talked about change, we've really had to change our practices. And part of that big change has been around our collective commitments and knowing our purpose. So we're just going to kind of take you through the process of how we implemented this work. This is a lot, but like Sally had said earlier, and it may have been in a previous Zoom, sorry, Sally, but you know, we eat the elephant one bite at a time. And so that's how you're going to do this work, is it's just going to be one bite at a time. I will say that, you know, when our reentry plan and going back to school, and it's going to look differently, and you know, you may be scared of thinking, I don't know if we can do one more thing, or I don't know if we can add this to our plate. It's important to know that this PLC work is the plate. And so this is not adding anything new. This is just changing the way you're doing. And you're probably already going to have to change the way you're doing school with blended learning or virtual, that sort of thing. So I think that this just makes sense. I think that this timing is profoundly perfect at this moment. So our collective commitments, it's important to know that with our collective commitments, we develop those with our staff. And so they said, you know, this is what we can say that we're going to commit to. This is the behaviors that we're going to say that we're going to do. Our collective commitments changed from year 1 to year 2. And that's because we became more knowledgeable in our practice, and we knew better. And so when you know better, you do better. And so with our collective commitments, those have changed. I don't know that they'll change a whole lot this year, but I do think that we will just become more laser-like with our focus and knowing, you know, these are the behaviors that we want to exemplify. Our teams, they start every meeting out with their collective commitments. That's kind of goes in with our master schedule. As an administrator, one of the most important pieces that you have of this work is creating the time within your master schedule for teams to be able to meet.
Ms. Wallace, I'd like to speak a little bit to this, but if we could, I don't know if I
Yes,
was on
you
this
go.
part,
You go
but-
right ahead.
So just to share a little bit about some personal story around our master schedule. So as I told you earlier, as an administrator, I was that controlling type A administrator. So it was my schedule, that I created that schedule, sat in my office for weeks by myself. That was my schedule. And was very proud of that schedule. That schedule had helped us to, as a district, to ensure, that we were really allocating our money where we could get the most for our kids. I was very proud of the fact that we had been able to provide paid preps for many of our staff members. So we had some teachers who were in that turnover that we had experienced those first couple of years I spoke about. Many of those were not positions that weren't replaced because we were able to pay teachers for their prep time and really save some money. And so I always laugh and think back of a conversation that I had with our solution tree coach, Regina Owens, on the very first day she visited our campus, the first day we'd ever met. She said, "Let me see your master schedule." So I proudly take her that master schedule and we take a look at it. And she says, "So does this schedule reflect your beliefs of high levels of learning for all kids?" Couldn't answer that. Reflected my beliefs for getting the most out of my staff, for being sure that we had a really tight schedule. And so that's one of the first things that we had to do, as Ms. Smith spoke about in the video, was we had to change our master schedule. And we did that. September, school year had already started. But that's something that we knew that we had to do to really be able to dig in and get into this work, because we had to provide that time for our staff to collaborate, to establish that culture of collaboration among them. They had to be able to meet. They had to be able to come together at a common time to establish that true collaboration. And so we were able to make the changes immediately there in September and provide time for our literacy folks and our math folks, and then eventually for science and social studies and other teams. So that master schedule, that's one of the big keys to ensuring that you can develop the culture of collaboration within your school.
And I know that we talked a lot about a guiding coalition, which is a leadership team. And as Mr. Stacks had previously said, as administrators, a lot of times we like to do the master schedule because we want to be in control of it. But one of a key part of our success is we've allowed our guiding coalition to help us with our master schedule, to have that extra set of eyes to say, hey, have you thought about maybe, putting this time in, or have you thought about maybe giving an opportunity for this team to collaborate during this time? That's been critical.
And that doesn't mean that we still don't have the final say. Right. That we can't go back and still, and be sure that this is going to work for everyone and for all kids. And we're not saying put your master schedule up on a board in a room and just let everybody come in and be a free-for-all. That's not what we're saying. But we do provide the opportunities for them to give us input on it.
And then the other key part of your master schedule is going to be designing times for tier 1, 2, and 3 instruction. With the 4 questions that Mr. Stacks alluded to earlier, that is the foundation to your work with your teacher teams, is following those 4 questions of what do we want students to learn? How will we know that they've learned it? What are we going to do when they don't learn it? And then what are we going to do if they already know it? So those 4 questions guide everything that we do. And those 4 questions are in tier 1, 2, and 3 instruction. And so having that time throughout the day and your daily practice is very important. After the magic schedule, after the master schedule, identifying those essential standards was key. Teachers are working hard, and they will work hard because that's what teachers do. But knowing what they're teaching collectively is very powerful. And so those teachers need to know, and I'll be honest, this part was really hard for us because it was long and it was tedious. And at some points we just wanted to say, like, just give it to us. Just tell us what the essential standards are. or I know that the other districts have done this work, let's just take theirs, because that's the easy way. But that will not get you where you need to go. And so it was important that our teachers went through that identifying of essential standards. And I'll be honest, what we deemed as essential in year 1 wasn't necessarily essential in year 2. So teachers and administrators, just as educators, we kind of like those checklists, and we like to say, okay, we're done with that, let's move on. We're done with that, let's move on. You can't do that with this work, because as your knowledge increases and as you get better, you constantly go back and change things to make them better. And so essential standards was one of those for us. We also work to develop unit plans with that plan, do, study, act process. And so just using that cycle throughout all of our instruction, having that instructional calendar, and knowing, you know, and pre-planning and knowing, okay, after we teach these essentials, this is how we're going to assess students, and this is what we're going to know. And so designing those CFAs and CSAs were very important. That's common formative assessment and common summative assessment. And then monitoring that student and adult learning. This is the PLCs is not just for students, it's for adults. And so as Sally had said earlier, you know, she's a 40-year veteran in education, and we are constantly learning, all of us. And if we're not modeling learning and being that that learner of this practice, then our teachers aren't going to do that either. And so then the big part, and at first whenever we heard celebrations, I thought, oh, that's fun, because I'm very elementary minded and everybody loves a good party. But celebrations is so important. And I didn't understand why until we started this work and we got really deep into it. This work is hard. Our journeys that we're sitting here talking about and us going through this whole process, it probably sounds very easy, but it has not been easy. It's been blood, sweat, and tears. And so that celebration gives you that momentum to keep going. And so those are, that's a critical piece. And whenever I say celebrate, you don't go through this whole list and then celebrate. You do collective commitments and you celebrate. You do your master schedule and you celebrate. You identify essential standards and you celebrate. So you celebrate often after you have big wins and people, and you see growth of adults and student learning. Sally, did you want to add anything to this piece?
Yes, and just a couple of thoughts and comments. It is daunting when you start to look at this, but anything worth doing is going to require some effort and some commitment. And here again, I can't really think of anything that is more valuable to us. That master schedule change, that's a structural change, and it's really important, but it's doable. And too often we think about the things that block us, that get in our way, and we have to kind of shift our thinking and think about what can we do? We can eat this elephant, as Julie had said, one bite at a time. And if we put it into those manageable pieces, I think that we can celebrate those moments. And that's something I'm not really good at, but it's really important to focus on. And in our high school, sometimes I think high schools are a little harder sell. But I have been so proud of our teachers and how they have come to embrace the process and going through the 10-day cycle. And we called it reach and reteach to provide that intervention time for our students. And that seems to be a little more palatable to them to go back. And on the essential standards, you're exactly right. The things that we first thought of as being essential, and some teachers really held on, everything is essential. But it's really not. And so we had asked when we came back just before the end of the school year in May, we brought teachers in small groups, and we asked them to go back and review their essential standards. Is it really essential? This whole COVID-19 pandemic has changed our perspective on some things. And I think it provides us with some unique opportunities for true reevaluation of our priorities and what we do consider to be essential standards for our content areas and what we need to focus on. I know the playbook was an attempt to look at our unfinished learning, and I think that's a great tool that we don't forget that that's out there, because that's a valuable resource that I think all our teachers can go back and take a look at. And it is a constant monitoring and adjusting. And my goodness, we are all champions, I think, at that now, because we have monitored and adjusted since March. And I think teachers are our true heroes and our true resilient people that are able to take on this hard work. They just need to be supported and guided and encouraged. And I think as administrators, that's really our role, from the superintendent to the teacher leaders. You know, even the student leaders can have some voice in what's going on through this process. And it's really important to engage everyone in that relationship building and talking about it. I know when we first started at the high school level, we were trying to assess student work using NWEA and seeing where students were, and they didn't understand. High school students are notorious for not caring about those kinds of assessments. And I went from classroom to classroom and I talked to them about, you know, why? Here's my question again. Why? Why are you taking this assessment? And they kind of looked at me and they said, well, okay. And we saw a huge shift in their approach. And as we begin to recognize and celebrate the student success, it really was an impact on our culture. So it's exciting. It's exciting work. And even in this environment where we find ourselves, I keep thinking that this blended learning, this virtual component, that's going to be a way perhaps to even build in some more time for teachers to collaborate. If we take what we have and we make some lemonade with these lemons, I think we can move forward in ways that we never had. What an exciting time to be in education, to be innovative and to be thinking about how we can use this to restate what education looks like. So it's exciting and challenging and scary.
Yes, all of those things. So we know that that was a lot. And we know that your mind's spinning and you're like, okay, what do I do now? And what do I do next? And so we tried to take those pieces that we just talked about and really go through and say, okay, what do you need to do now? Because I know as a learner, as an administrator, when I go to any kind of PD, I want to know, okay, when I leave here, what do I need to do? And so we tried to take that information and put that in a format that would be workable for you as an administrator. And so that first one of just defining a clear and compelling purpose, knowing why do you exist, and doing that with your faculty. It can't just be something that you come up with your own. It's got to be everybody's all in this together. And then do that work together. Form a guiding coalition. Look, and when we formed our guiding coalition, we looked at, we kind of put it up on a big player board, and we looked at, okay, how many years has this person been in the district? What are their strengths? We tried to get different personality types. We tried to get people that were kind of outside the box thinkers, and then also with a mix of people that just liked things, in rows and boxes and that sort of thing. So you had a good mix.
Ms. Wallace, can I interject there just a minute? Also, and don't stray away from those naysayers who have influence. So what we found was, that it was very important to identify those who were influential among your staff, but maybe sometimes rode that negative fence, to bring them in and get them on board with the work that you're doing. Because eventually, if they hold the beliefs of high levels of learning for all kids, they're going to get on board. All right. And so you can even bring your naysayers on, and don't be afraid to add some members and take away members as you go along. We weren't very long into our journey with our guiding coalition when we realized very soon a critical piece that we had left off was a special education representative on our guiding coalition. So we asked them to come on board, and that leads to just a whole nother story of the issues that we've been able to work on around our special education department and the problems that we had there, that long-seated, deep mindset issues around special education that this work with professional learning communities has allowed us to totally shift. just one stat that I had written down that I wanted to share out. So any of you who may be on and you need help in that area, you can reach out to us and we can provide that assistance to you, or at least share what has worked for us. We've been able to reduce over a 2.5-year time about 15% of the number of our students receiving special education services have been able to be exited from an IEP altogether and moved to inclusion or transition into a 504 plan. So we've been, and that's all a result of inclusion and the work that we've been doing with our staff around professional learning communities.
Yes, an important part of this team as a guiding coalition, they're not just someone you meet with in the summer. We meet with the guiding coalition, every month. And so we meet more than that during the summertime, but they are a key piece to making this engine work. And so they're a huge cog in that.
Right. And to also throw out about the guiding coalition, I couldn't imagine going through what we have gone through now and having to prepare our blended learning plan without our guiding coalition.
Yep.
As a leader, I said it changes you and changes how you do work. Thank goodness it's changed me and how I've done work, because I, sure enough, would have been gray-headed with little hair had I tried to go through this and develop this plan and by myself in the room locked in my office. Mm-hmm. So we've been able to turn to our guiding coalition and our leaders for input and guidance.
Yep.
We've implemented that guiding coalition even at the district level at Rivercrest. And like you say, if it weren't for that team of individuals, oh my goodness gracious, it really would be insurmountable. So it's been a comfort to know that there are other people that we can listen to and bounce ideas off of and talk through every scenario that we can think about. There's some comfort in that.
That kind of goes to that next piece of instilling a culture of collaboration. It's not me, but we. One of the first things that we had to do as a district is we had to look at, what are the words that we're using? As far as like, that's my class, that's my kids, or those are those kids, or we called, students with special needs, we often refer to them as SPED. Our special education teachers were on an island. They weren't even on a team. So we had to really look at how can we make this a collaborative piece and how are we going to be in this all together. We did simple things like that anyone can do, but our hashtag for our school was QPS Better Together. And so everything that we did, we'd be like, okay, so how can we do this as a district? And we're on a small campus, and I know not everyone is, you're at different size schools, but we looked at, we didn't want it to be a high school and an elementary. We wanted it to be one district. And so how do we accomplish that goal? And this is something we continue to work on. This is nothing that we're not ever finished with, it. We just keep working. And then our big shift that I feel like we've seen the most transformation in is that focus on learning and results. So when we looked at this and we really had our first year, we really focused on growth. And then this past year, we focused on mastery. And that's very important to know that, through this process, you're going to have times of learning. And what Mr. Sachs referred to earlier with your staff's going to be learning too. So you have to know when to give them water breaks. If you think of a basketball team that runs up and down and kids get tired and they have to come out and sit on the bench for a minute and need a water break, you do that with your staff. This is fast paced. The time doesn't stop. And so you have to know when to give your staff a water break. We have some data that's been very exciting. Last year, all of our students, K2, 100% growth in reading and math. Huge celebration. That really started to shift our beliefs and knowing that all kids can learn. That's something easy to say, but it's different to do, or it's different to believe. We had another big thing happen this year. School, we didn't get to take our assessments, which, like Sally, our teachers really wanted to see that progress and that growth. But our students scored higher in February on their assessments on iStation than they did in May of last year. So we saw that 1.5 growth happen. And so that was pretty exciting. But you got to focus on learning, and you got to focus on results. So you've got to know what are the students learning and what are the teachers knowing, and then what's the results of that's going to look like. And then next steps. So that other one was due now, and this is next steps. And so you're going to identify your essential standards and learning targets by skill. That team develop common formative assessments, know how to respond when some students don't learn, and then celebrate often. Celebrate everything.
Hey, Julie, give me a second. I'm going to mute everyone, and then I'm going to unmute you.
Okay.
All right, you should be good to go.
Okay, thank you. So when you get to doing this, when you get to the next steps, anything on the All PLC blog or anything on the Solution Tree website, they have some great resources in knowing how to do these things. And so when you get to this part, you know, reach out to us. There's a whole list of cohort schools on the ADE website. All of us have been through this. We know we've done this work. And so reach out to any of us on how to help or use those resources from Solution Tree, because it is a great asset to have, and we've used those as well.
Julie, before you click off, down there at the bottom, the link as well, From Independence to Interdependence. That's an article that Julie and I co-authored, and it's on the All Things PLC website as well as Department of Ed site. Discusses many of the things and the steps and experiences that we've had in this journey.
And then the last one, Missy, I'm going to let you talk about this one.
Yeah, I just wanted everybody to know that there are several opportunities across the state in order to receive some training. These are just the ones that are immediately coming up, but I wanted to tell you where to find them. There's a link, Professional Learning Communities in Arkansas. If you will go onto the ADE website and click on P for Professional Learning Communities, in the first paragraph, there's a link that says PLC events. Now I need to update that, and I will get that updated today. But here are some things that are coming up with your ERZs, your educational renewal zones that are pretty much based in all corners of the state. They host several trainings, and these trainings are free. And this year, with everything going on with COVID, the trainings are also virtual. So you can jump on a Zoom link, and the links will be found on that website. But just know too, the University of Arkansas Fort Smith ERZ is providing a 4-part series where PLC is the plate. So it just takes you through the foundational pieces of PLC. There's one in August, and then the second one I believe is October the 14th, and then they'll have one too in the spring. Also, August 31st, you have the Arkansas State University. Now, even though Arkansas State University is hosting this, it's still available to everyone across the state. And they're doing the revisit the PLCs at work with Tim Brown, just going through the 4 questions and helping everyone set up that ongoing process. And then on September the 3rd, if you want to do the identifying priority standards and developing proficiency scales, that's through Marzano. Now, there's another link if you go on to H for high reliability schools, where you'll see a lot of the Marzano events happening too. But I think a lot of times we don't know that there are these trainings out there that are free, that you don't have to pay those fees to send your whole staff to and make it part of a professional development. So, and there are a couple things that I did want to add. Just wanted you to know too, I've got some great books that's got the evidence of what's going on in these schools, and it's beyond the ACT Aspire achievement. You see a decrease, and I think Michael said this too, a decrease in special ed referrals, and you see an increase in the exiting of special ed students. But some other things that have happened is just a decrease in discipline referrals, the focus of direction, increase the teacher retention, and then you do have, and I've heard districts say, hey, they're recruiting my teachers or recruiting our leaders because they've gone through the process and they know that process. That's a good thing. I think Mandy Dunlap, Julie Kate said she worked with Mandy, and Mandy's again lost another assistant principal this year because they're being recruited. So that's a great thing to. I may not be a great thing for you to go through, but it's a great thing for the State Department to be able to see those administrators increase their leadership. So that's with the training.
We just wanted to thank you all for attending this. I hope that this was helpful in some way to you, and you know, as we get back and planning for that back to school PD in this school year, and it's going to look very different, and we know that. But if you have any questions, you know, don't hesitate to reach out to any of us.
Well, and I'm going to open it up. If you have any questions right now or would like to discuss anything, this will be a great time to do so. If you're experiencing some frustrations in your district and want some guidance from these administrators, please.
Hey, Missy, this is Rachel. If I can jump on just for a quick second. One of the things that Evan and I discussed that we wanted to make sure that we addressed with everyone on the call, I know that this morning was very awkward for all of us, and I know it probably produced some anxiety for all of us. This could happen on any video chat platform, and so we don't want you to be afraid of Zoom, but rather we would rather equip you to manage it when it does happen. And so one of the things that Evan and I discussed was if you are going to share a link, you may want to share it with an LMS. But also we are happy to kind of walk through the process with you on the front end. And so I'm going to give the name Evan Patrick, and he is with Team Digital, and he and Lisa Russell are happy to provide any guidance or assistance in terms of using platforms like these.
And I agree. And something Evan said to me too, he said, you know, most people are not going to put their registration links and passwords out to the public like I did with the commissioner's memo. So when you're within a school district, that's not something you do. And now I think probably the State Department, after this one call this morning, it has alarmed several at the State Department. So probably something that we will start practicing is a registration link, but I hope it doesn't deter people from jumping on a Zoom. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. There are a couple other things that I wanted you to know too. If you would like to set up an observation when we get back to normal to go visit any one of these schools, I have a Google form that you can complete on the professional learning communities in Arkansas page, where you can request to go visit one of these schools, and I'll reach out and set it up with the administrator. But they have opened their doors and allowed people just to come in and see what's going on and to watch the process in action. And it is fun to see that process in action. So please take advantage of that. Can you send out a copy of the slides to everyone who participated in the Zoom? Rachel, can we get a list of the ones who are participating so that we could do that? If not, I know it'll be on a recording on the site. But do you know how to pull that list of participants to send that out?
Do you want it like as an email? Do you want it in the chat? Or are you just wanting just the panelists, Missy?
I would probably send it out in an email to those who are all on this Zoom. Email. Arthur says email.
Okay, let me see if I can capture that really quickly.
Okay. Any questions from anyone? This will be a series that we have started. This is the first part of a series that just kind of came off of the AD Summit. There were questions on what do we do next and how do we get started with professional learning communities. So this is the first part, the why and the how of PLCs. We will begin after this, just setting up a leadership team will probably be our next webinars. How do you set up that leadership team? I know they discussed a little bit of that today, and the importance of that leadership team and moving your district forward and developing that culture of trust. I will say, and I said it at the beginning, we all come from different backgrounds. It took us a little longer in the process, just changing the culture. So before we could get to the action pieces, we had so much of the culture piece of it that had to be changed. So that's hard. That is hard when you need to get it to that point and to change everybody. But one of the things we did is just made it an actionable, that everything you did, you took action. It was, you would have the teachers who would come and say, oh, my whole grade level cannot read on grade level. And you're going, yeah, okay. And they're, this grade level is just low. They came to me low and they can't read on grade level. And so I got to where I was very focused and said, okay, you tell me which students and which skills, and then we'll talk about it. And what you would find is you have a grade level of 100 kids, and they would find, well, really, it's only these 7 kids. And then they would find that skill. And so when we narrowed it down and became so focused that we knew the kid by kid and skill by skill, then after that, I'd said, okay, so what are we going to do about it in the next 5 days? So you made sure that you said, okay, you're not going to wait to the end of the 9 weeks. What are we going to do about it in the next 5 days? So everything is actionable and bringing that evidence to the table. Okay, we've got some. Would you recommend we start with the coalition team, then share the information with the PLC groups and start? Will one of you please answer that question?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I was trying to read the question. I was getting Rachel a link. What was the question?
Do you recommend that they start with the coalition team before they start with their?
We started with our coalition. So like whenever I came in here at Quitman, that was one of the first things we did. And to be honest, that was kind of hard for me because I was new and I didn't know anybody. But Mr. Stacks knew everyone. And what we did was try to make people excited. They didn't even know what a guiding coalition was. That was a very new term for them. We made invitations and made them real fun, and we snail mailed them out to everybody. And then we had a meeting, and then we were just very honest with them that we were going to need them in order for this to work. And so that's how we started.
Okay, I'm going to ask, there's another question out here, but I'm going to ask another question that I think some people have had. Okay, I'm not part of the PLC project. I didn't get chosen, so I don't have that intense support. What can I do in order to move that without having that intensive support? What can I do?
Okay, so that is important to know, that this work, you do not have to be a part of the cohort to do it. You don't have to have solution tree. Does it make it a little easier? Absolutely, because you don't always, second guess yourself. Because I know as an administrator, you're often lonely and you're doing a lot of things by yourself. And so it's, for me, it's constantly like, okay, is that the right decision for everyone? Is this what's going to be best for kids? That sort of thing. And so, but you can absolutely do this work without it. Two books that I would purchase if I did not have this is the Learning by Doing book and the RTI workbook. Those are two books that, Sally's holding Learning by Doing up. That I live by that book. And I mean, even me, this is going to be my 4th year in a cohort school. I still go back to that book weekly. I have it highlighted. It looks like my Bible, honestly. It's got tabs just like hers, so that's something that I would definitely purchase to help you. And it goes through step by step what you need to do. There's a ton of handouts, resources, that sort of thing.
Someone asked about the small school districts. Rich Smith, I believe it's Rich Smith, who has a book out too on developing PLCs in a small school district. But that Learning by Doing would be. There's another question on how do you regulate PLC agenda? Do administrators set out agendas or together with teachers and how?
So at first of this, because really what PLCs are is it's just a guide on how to behave. And so it's just really a guide on what do my behaviors look like as a practitioner. And so we had to first, I first had to lead the meetings when we first started this, just to model for them, this is how you do the work. And so I would lead them. We used those 4 questions. And then after that, the teachers started doing it. And so now the teachers do all of them. We developed a team meeting protocol for the team leaders to use that would help them, just to make sure they're staying on track. We noticed very quickly that our teams would start with housekeeping, because that tends to be kind of where you start a meeting with. And their meeting would just, they would never get to the meat. They would never get to those 4 questions because it was overtaken with housekeeping. And so we had to adjust our protocol where we started with the 4 questions and then we put housekeeping at the bottom. And so that was very important for the meeting part. But now I have a Google folder up, and the teams just drop their agendas in there. They all have different roles. Sometimes teacher A might be the recorder, where they're the ones typing everything up. Teacher B might be the team leader, and then those roles change the next week.
There are a lot of resources that are available for free on the Solution Tree website as well. So that's another good place to go. And even as a district superintendent, I pop in on meetings from time to time just because I want to know what's going on with kids and taking the pulse, like Julie and Mike talked about earlier. We want to make sure that we are doing the working on the right things. We work hard enough. Let's make sure that we're working on the right kinds of things to help promote that student's success.
Did I miss any questions? Okay, I know Mary Holland asked about small schools. I don't know how small your school is, but we're considered a small school. Like, we only have 1 high school chemistry teacher. We only have 1 trig teacher. So we do have, in departments where we only have one teacher of a content area, and we've made this work. The key to that is to identify your skills. And so, we only have 1 teacher teaching 7th grade English, but they're teaching the same skills in 7th grade English that they are in 8th grade English, as far as, inferring and determining the main idea and that sort of thing. And so their essential standards and assessments are around the skills. Did anybody else have a question?
I was putting in the book. It's not Rich Smith. It was Aaron Hansen who wrote a very small book. It's called How to Develop PLCs for Singletons in Small Schools.
Mm-hmm. Mary Holland, yes, vertical PLCs. We do that across the board, because that's important. It doesn't matter if you're a big school or a small school or a middle-sized school. You need vertical PLCs.
Hey, Missy, this is Rachel again. Without having access to your actual account, I don't know if I can capture email addresses, so I'm going to take the
I think she cut out on me.
Sorry, this is Rachel.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay, so I just popped the link to those slides in the chat. Since I don't have access to the actual account, I don't know if I can capture those email addresses or not, so I want to make sure before everyone leaves that they can click that link in the chat and access those slides.
Okay. And it may come up on my once I do the recording, sometimes that will come up, the transcript. How do you structure collaborative teams? Where are your music, art, and PE teachers?
I also put my email in the chat in case anyone needed to email me later. So our collaborative teams, we have a lot of people that are on multiple teams. Being at a small school, you know, we wear many hats. And so sometimes, you know, our third grade English teacher might be on a guiding coalition and, you know, on the third grade ELA team and on the elementary ELA team. And so a lot of times they play different roles, but we have a fine arts team where our music, PE, and art, and what we've done is we've worked to identify those skills that I was speaking about earlier. And you know, if let's say that in fourth grade they're teaching fractions during the month of August, or that's going to be the skill that they're focused on, then the music teacher will try to pull in fractions. The art teacher will pull in fractions, you know, so those skills become a very important piece to what we're doing. And so they're all, you know, those, the fine arts team plays a key role in this. And then we only have one third grade math teacher, so they work with the fourth grade math teacher. So I did the collaborative times to where they had the same prep period where they could meet. Did that answer your question, I hope? Okay, anyone else? Mike Walker, those are great books. I've read those.
All right.
Anybody else? Good.
I think we are going to call it. Just know that we are always available, because our and I believe Julie said it too, when you know better, you do better. And it would be a shame for us to have learned so much and not share it with each other. So please reach out to us if you need any questions from any of us. And like I said, I can get you in touch with any of these administrators and other administrators across the state if you're looking for someone with the same size district operating through professional learning communities. Thank you so much for joining us today. We will continue with this web series, so look for commissioners' memos. Next time I'm going to ask that you register for this session and not just click on the link, because we've learned a lot of lessons with this Zoom presentation. One that I believe someone just said that we will be connected forever now because we've experienced something that was not so pleasant. But there will be a registration link, so please encourage others and yourself. Don't let that deter you from joining these sessions in the future. I hope everybody has a great afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for y'all's presentation and sharing everything.